welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I am your host, Maureen, and we're just going to call Janice our co-host from now because she's on almost every one of these with me now. So our co-host Janice is here with us. And as promised, we are discussing fan fiction today. We are very first one. Now, Tracy is someone who I have followed on Instagram or on Twitter since the Sanditon craze hit. Even before Sanditon was renewed, when we were fighting for it, and even before I had my podcast channel, I was following Tracy, and she started writing this story on Instagram. It was called Susan's Plan, and she would release it like 254 characters at a time, but in a group of 8 at a time on Twitter. And so there was so many of us that just got hooked into this story, and we had to wait like a few weeks for her to post a new section of 8 Twitter tweets.
Like an old-fashioned serial, like they used
exactly.
years ago to publish. They would have published during this time period we're discussing, you know, chapter by chapter in the paper.
Exactly. And you had to like watch, because it would say 1 of 8 or 3 of 7 or whatever. So you had to watch what number you want to make sure you were going in order of what they were, because it was, you know, bumps up depending on people comment on it. But she published it on Archive of Our Own, thankfully. And she published it in full, and we can read it in chapters as opposed to little mini books. So it's on Archive of Our Own. She changed the story title. It is called On a Night Like This. It's her very first fan fiction. Find her on Archive of Our Own. Her handle is Regency Seabather. So
cool name.
Janice, what did you think of the story?
I really enjoyed it. I think it's very well written, and it definitely draws you in, as you were talking about. The only part of the story that I find a little that I have a hard time believing is the excuse for why Eliza was willing to drop their engagement.
Yeah.
You know, that part I found not entirely plausible, just because of the fact it was based on her not having any money, when the story we had with the original series was that she had all kinds of money.
Yeah.
So that's the rest of it. I think is very well written, and I love the way she tells the story, and she even, you know, brings Tom and Mary in by having it go back 2 days earlier to the event that they're talking about. And I love that obviously Lady Susan and Lord Babington are involved, and Georgiana's there, and Mary's there. You know, it's great. I think, and she used some of the language that was used in the series, you know, like an outlier, like that kind of thing. So it felt very relatable.
And I felt like the cadence of how she wrote felt like it was from that time period. Like it fit in well. There was some little nuances that were a little too modern, but overall I think the cadence of how she wrote fit in really well with that time period. And read and get into it,
and you can visualize that she tells the story. She does a good job of writing a picture, telling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can see those characters doing those things. You know, it was, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I think with the Eliza storyline, I think that I think it could be plausible that she ran out of money because her husband spent it all. However, I think that the part for me that would trip me up a little bit is that she knew she wasn't getting money from Sydney, because Sydney only was going to be with her because he needed money. So I think that would be the thing right there. That wouldn't, I mean, I get you like him, but you're not going to get anything from him that you need. If this ruse is so important to you, you're not going to get what you need from him.
And if she married for money the first time and ended up with no money, why would she want to marry him?
Exactly.
You know,
but I do like the idea that, because that was kind of an idea I was trying to work out how it would work. But I think Tracy grasped onto what a lot of the fandom wanted, was Babington and Susan to be the saviors of the day.
Right. Absolutely. And they were.
Like they were the ones who, and I do like how she ended where she said that Eliza was unhappy with the allowance that she was given, but she had no choice but to take it. And just that idea of Eliza sitting alone in a house somewhere, being wholly dependent on someone who doesn't like her, it tickled me. I really enjoyed that.
Yes, I agree. And I also think I love the fact that she has, I guess it's in this chapter, hopefully I'm not skipping ahead, because I read all four of them, all four stories, you know. Oh, maybe well, anyway, I read most of it. When my power was out, and it was the one thing I could bring up and read. It was great.
Tracy, you saved Janice's power outage from being boring and dull.
Exactly, because you can't read with the lights I have around here. So yes, and of course I kept having to charge. I was charging things on my car battery, you know. So, but yeah, and I liked the way that she had the money was given to Tom, but Sydney was in charge of it.
Yeah.
So I like that part.
And I like how it fits so well because Charlotte was already a part of building the town where Sydney wasn't. He was just supposed to be in charge of bringing people in, but Charlotte was in charge of organizing the bills and being a part of the administrative part of the town. And now Sydney gets to take over the town. So it's like, now they get to work in tandem to do something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was, so other than that one little piece, the rest of it I thought was very well done and very plausible and very, you know, yes. I mean, I'm sure all of us who watched this series and were heartbroken, and I don't know how you couldn't be at the end of the 8th episode, have spent time thinking of scenarios of how they would be brought together. And, you know, I would really, and I'm not the only one, I would really, really love to have a conversation with Andrew Davies and Justin to find out what they had in mind, how they were going to overcome that. Because I'm sure Justin,
if it would have never been canceled.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure that Justin probably even had started writing some of it, hoping that Theo James would come back. Because, you know, they were trying very hard to bring him back. So I'd love to know what their story would have been.
Yeah. But, and even if they would publish maybe what they started to write, I know that's probably never going to happen, but it would be kind of cool to see where it might have gone. Like, I know with these books are really juvenile, they're young adult books, but in the Twilight books, she sort of did that. She published something that she was working on prior to, or like she was potentially going to take it in a different story and direction. So she published the whole thing. It was all done, and then she gave the fans a little nugget of something that she was going to hopefully turn in that direction, but she never went that way. So that's something they could do in the future. Maybe after season 3 has aired and it's been completed, they can put out of, hey, this is where we were originally going to take it.
Right. And especially, you know, assuming that it's a success, the rest of the series is a success.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. I think it's impossible not to. And I think that what Tracy did is she picked up on a lot of the things that the fandom wanted at the end of that. She heard the cries of what everyone was saying. And I mean, she's part of the fandom. So that's why she's writing it, right? Because she loves this show. She loves this fandom. And she put a lot of elements in this story that a lot of us wanted to see.
Yeah.
We've got Babington and Susan being the heroes of the day. We've got Sydney and Charlotte being redeemed. So it's not she changed the storyline. She kept the original story, but she found a way to make it work so that Eliza was not just eliminated from the competition, but taken down several hundred pegs.
Yeah. That was a good thing about the reasoning. You know, before I even knew there was an archive of our own, and when, like you say, before we had any idea we were actually going to get a continuation of the series, I had read some posts from one of the fans on the Sanditon Facebook page, and went back and read a bunch of hers, and it was really good too. And she's continued to write, but I haven't had the time to sort through Facebook. I should ask her if she's put it in archive of her own, because this is, and it was reading that at the time and not knowing what was going to happen with the series. I finally had to stop reading it because I was getting confused between what was really in the show and what wasn't, you know, and I wanted to keep it straight. So now it's okay to read because we know it's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think
be
I
confused.
sort of had to do the same thing when it was before I started doing the podcast. I was reading as much fan fiction as I could that revolved around Sydney and Charlotte, HEA, and so I read a lot of those, and that's when I started writing mine. But once they announced season 2 and 3 is coming back, I stopped writing mine. I was like, okay, I don't want to get my head for expectations of what I want, because what I was writing is what I wanted to see happen with Theo James back.
Right.
And I didn't want to set myself up to hold my paltry writing up to their storyline, which is obviously going to be better. And I think that a lot of writers who are doing fan fiction for the show did the same thing. And I know there's a lot of people when Theo James backed out said, I don't have the heart to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of people do that, but I'm thankful that Tracy kept writing. She didn't just stop writing Sid Lot happy endings because he was gone. She kept going. And as Janice said, I don't know if you guys caught that, but she 4 things. Tracy has 4 things published on her page. It's on a night like this is what we're discussing now. Liza's Folly. What a great title is that?
Yeah, really.
That one is currently 2 chapters of she's not sure how many. Sydney's Musings is complete. It's just 1 chapter, 1 little snippet. And A Crow Encounter is the one she's currently working on. That is 17 chapters completed. She's doing 19. So I'm pretty sure she has all 19 done. She's just working on the last 2 chapters.
Yeah.
So check those out on Archive of Her Own. But she's got 4 pieces, and she's one who I think what I liked about her and why I wanted to do her first was because she was the first one who really hooked me.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah, and she has a great way of writing. I mean, good descriptions, good emotions.
Yes.
I like her. I really like her work.
And the way she describes those tense moments between Sydney and Charlotte, you really were like, okay, what's going to happen right now? And what's next? Because she wrote it well enough that she input you into the middle of their tension rather than just saying they did this. She described every aspect of how they looked at each other, of what they're even right down to how their breathing was. She described every aspect of that. So it puts you right in the middle of it. And I like that I like hearing more from Susan, because a lot of the stuff, like they kind of leave Susan as the background member, or as I know that once it ended, some people tried to make her more prominent because they wanted her to be the savior of Sanditon. But what I liked about this is they kept Susan's snark and her sass and her sneakiness, because that's what she was doing in the show. So it was easy to read Susan from the end of Sanditon into this. It was easy to believe that was the natural trajectory for her character.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It really was. It was, it's just very well written. I mean, I think she should be proud of her work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a quick read. It's only 9 chapters.
Yeah.
But I tell you, when she was posting those at 8 tweets at a time for like weeks in between, we were all texting her going, okay, Tracy, where's the next one? Come on, where give us another one.
Yeah.
There was a couple weeks there where I would stalk her page to see if maybe I had missed it in my Twitter feed of she posted another one or not. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, and when I read, maybe I didn't read the 2 in between, but I did read as much of the Crow one as she had written. And it was definitely, I wanted to keep reading it. I didn't want to, it's a little cumbersome looking at the story on this website, because you kind of have to go through, it's slow moving, especially when you're trying to read it on your phone.
Yeah.
From one chapter to another. So but it's worth a read for sure. Any Sitlod fan should definitely read it.
And Tracy is full Sitlod.
Yeah.
As most people are, I think. Maybe not so much now, but that's only on principle. That's not because they actually believe that Sitlod shouldn't be Sitlod.
Right.
So on a night like tonight, the summary is: a chance meeting at a ball provides Charlotte and Sydney with a night full of revelations. And so the whole story is just one night, barely even a couple of hours, I would imagine, at this one event. What is it, 3 months? It doesn't really, I think it's been a couple of months. I can't remember. I think
you're right. I think it's like 3 months. It says this takes place 9 months after episode 8 of Sanditon.
Okay.
and finds Sydney contemplating events whilst at a society ball. And actually, you're right. It all takes place at that ball, except for the part about she tells us how Mary and Tom learned about what Lady Susan and Babington were up to.
Yeah. And what I like about that scene too is that they are putting you right there 2 days prior in Sanditon talking to Tom and Mary, but the lead into that is Lady Susan reflecting as she tells them. And so what she did there was a really nice way of showing, not telling, because the natural tendency, especially for amateur writers, is to tell you everything that's happening rather than let you experience it. And she did a really good job of, she could have just had Lady Susan saying, well, this is what we told Tom and Mary, this is what happened. But instead she let Lady Susan lead into, and then went back to 2 days prior when she was actually there talking with them, doing this thing.
Right. And I have to correct something. What I just read you was a description of Sydney's musings.
That's what I thought.
Because
what I read was from
the one for a night like this was actually a chance meeting at a ball provides Charlotte and Sydney with a night of full revelations. And it takes place. Yeah, I was thinking it was
I feel like she said
3 or 4
months in
months
there at some point.
Yeah.
Or maybe at the end it was 3 months later. That's what it was. At the end, the last chapter, it was 3 months later, and then Sydney and Charlotte were at a different ball. And they're already married.
The one with Crow.
No. On a night like this ends with a ball, and it's Charlotte and Sydney are already married. And he's looking for her, and he finds her on the balcony. Okay. I think I want to read a little portion of what this is right in chapter 1 that you'll find.
Okay.
I love how she worded this. I'm going to read the first little 3 paragraphs. They look long, but they're short. So I'm just going to read the intro. It says, Sydney stood in the room once more, feeling the outlier he always was, in a sea of strangers, imbibing the night away, laughing and dancing, romantic pairings sparking all over the place. Love was in the air, but not for him. Such tedious events. Sydney took a sip from his glass and glanced around, then paused. She was here. The noise from the throng faded away until all he could hear was the beating of his broken heart, beating alive for the first time since that dreadful parting of theirs. She was here, a perfect rose among all the dandelions, a breath of fresh air and as beautiful as ever, her dress a pale pink complementing her beautiful dark tresses. She had not changed at all, but why should she? Perfection. He took another sip to calm his nerves, hoping that no one had seen his reaction before moving away. She was here. I like the symmetry in all of those and the descriptions of all those pieces. You get it, and I know we said this a couple of times in this, but it puts you right there. Like I can see Charlotte standing there in a ballroom.
Right.
And even though she doesn't describe the way the ballroom itself looks, she doesn't describe the colors or the lighting or the other people, I can see that there. Just through that first paragraph where she describes how Sydney's feeling, I can see it.
And because we have the reference from the episode 6 at the ball in London. And so we kind of have that kind of reference
For me, it doesn't look like that.
Well, no, not exactly, but I mean, you know what a London ball would look like, even if it's not that London ball. You get that idea. So yeah, no, I love the way she writes. Yeah.
And I love that description of Charlotte, a perfect rose among all the dandelions. I love that.
Yeah.
That was great. Because everyone views Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte is like right up there in my top 5 characters. She's not my top. That's because Esther's the best person in the world. But she's really high on my list, obviously, because she is a great character.
She is.
You love her. You just see her and you love her. I mean, Rose Williams herself has that attribute to her, where you just like you see and you're like, I want to be your friend. You seem so nice and you're so beautiful and you're so vivacious and you just want that. And so her description of her, I think, was just spot on. It was really, really pretty and prettily said.
Yeah, no, and the whole description of where he is and where she is at the ball and their observations and I like this chapter 2 says, this paragraph, a flutter of pink caught his eye and there she was again, dancing away without a care in the world, her face beaming away at her would-be suitor, a dark and ugly creature snarling away inside. mine, it said, but of course she couldn't be his. He thought pitifully. He moved around the room again, distancing himself from the dancing couple,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's just such a great description. So I would highly recommend people read it.
Yes, exactly. And when that sentence where I was reading along with you, but that sentence where it said mine, it said like I could see Theo James's face twisting as he says that. And again, we have a reference for that because we've seen him watch her at a ball dance with other people before. Only that time he was a little more joyful than he was in this moment.
That's right, because he knew she was his.
Yes. And that's an interesting juxtaposition too, that the last time we see them at a ball together, he knew she was his. And this time he felt she was his, but knew she wasn't.
Right.
I didn't think about that one before you said that.
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
All right. So that one is called On a Night Like This. Really good, quick read, 9 chapters. It's all complete. And part of me, like, I don't like to read, like when I search for fan fiction, because we've talked about this before, I have an unhealthy obsession with Pride and Prejudice, and I like to stay in that world. So I'll get into fan fiction, but I will only search for completed works because it drives me crazy to wait. I am super impatient. So I haven't started. I started reading A Crow Encounter, but I've only gotten into the first chapter because I know it's not finished, and I'm trying to hold back from reading it before it's finished.
I understand. So I'm frankly glad that I didn't start reading the Harry Potter series until it was done. Because anyway, have you watched, there's a film I just discovered, a series, a 1-season series called Lost in Austin?
Oh yes, I own that. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't watched it yet. I will. It's worth it then, huh?
There's a bit of language in it, but it's not bad.
Oh well, that's all right.
It's really funny, and she doesn't alter at all when she goes back into Regency England. So it just makes it funny.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. But it was funny. I just put in my Fire Stick. I just put in Jane Austen, and it was amazing all the stuff that came up.
Yeah, I mean, even Clueless is based on Jane Austen.
Right. Yeah.
And you would think that.
Which I didn't realize until wasn't it Paula that talked about that?
We might have talked about that. I don't know.
Somebody
I found that out in early college. I don't remember if Paula and I talked about it or not.
Well, I'm pretty sure you and Paula talked about it, and that was
Probably
the first I'd even thought about it. And then as soon as I heard it, I was like, yes.
I had read Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility in high school, but I didn't read Emma until college. And I was obsessed with Clueless because that came out when I was in high school. So those two, when I read Emma, I was like, oh, what is this? And then it just made me love Clueless even more. So
yeah, and I love Clueless because it's so witty. Well, now we know why.
Exactly.
Have you ever, another aside, you'll probably take this out. Have you ever seen the television series Veronica Mars?
I haven't seen that, but I know that that's one that it's been recommended to me a couple times in the past couple weeks.
It is so it's so well written. It's really witty, especially the first 2 seasons and the last season, which they made further apart. I mean, there's 3 seasons and then a 4th one that came later, and there's a movie in between.
There's something coming out recently, like soon, isn't there? They're revamping it.
Well, really? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, Kristen Belle is in it again.
Really? I love it. She's wonderful in it. And it's, my brother and I had seen it before. Well, except for the last series. And so it's on Hulu.
Okay.
So I did they have a 30-day free trial. And except for the movie, which is, I think, on Amazon. But anyway, yeah. So
we were just talking about that in our group the other day too, and people are like, because there's one girl who we call each other twins because we had the same thoughts about everything, and they were like, have you guys seen Veronica Mars? And we're the only 2, and we're the same age. We're like, no, we haven't seen it. That was high school. Like, what is the matter with you? Go watch that show. So it's weirdly enough, just in this week, they were talking about that.
It's really well done. I mean, it's really well done. Anyway,
Yeah.
Yep. We'll have to talk about it after you watch it.
We will. Okay. So A Crow Encounter, she has 2 chapters yet to finish, but she knows it's 19 chapters. So I have a feeling those 2 chapters are written. She's just going through and refining them and editing them.
That could be.
Janice read it.
I read it. Yes, I did. And I knew it was I didn't know ahead of time it was unfinished. And maybe you told me that, but I didn't realize it. But I'm like, so part of it got resolved, and then I'm going, but what about this other? What happened there? Because that was unresolved. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, it's I don't know if I buy it. Just the relationships that the relationships she put together. It's fun. It's really well written. It's I just didn't see those characters showing up together,
Allison and Crow. I like them, and like I said, I only got through chapter 1 of that, and I'm sorry, Tracy, I'm waiting for you to finish the last 2. Once you do that, I'll read the whole thing. but what I liked about it in the beginning, in the very first chapter, was how we see more Crow, because Crow is one of our favorite characters because he's just funny. He's just the clown. He's the drunkard. He's the one no one takes seriously. And I have a feeling, Mel, that he is way more serious than he allows people to view him as. But
yeah, it's really interesting. She stays true to his original character, but allows him to develop, which is good. I mean, I like the arc that she's making with him, and maybe it's more plausible than I think, but it'll be interesting to see. It may fit more with the Allison we're going to see in the new series, which is an interesting idea. And I think, it's really fun, a fun read. And I was definitely like, okay, what's going on now? I mean, I couldn't stop. So I can see why you wanted to hold off, or sort of decided to hold off, because you wanted to keep going. And that is one thing that's great about her writing. She definitely sucks you in, and you
she's really good.
You want to keep reading. And there's just a few little things, like there were 2 carriages that went to what's the name of the town where Willingdon.
Oh yeah.
And then they all leave in one carriage. So what happened to the other carriage? I mean, it's these things. It's but I pointed out when we were going through the reviews of the recaps on Sanditon, like the fact that Charlotte runs away from the beach into town without a hat and jacket, and when she arrives in town, she has a hat and jacket. It's just those continuity things. And so, but that's just me. I mean, I'm always those details are things I always pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense.
But anyway, the story is very interesting, and the part that she hasn't finished, I'm really interested to see where that goes.
Did you subscribe to it so you get notified when the other 2 come out?
No, I don't even know how to subscribe. How do I subscribe?
I think you can do that on Archive of Our Own. Yeah, let's see. I know you can do it on FanFiction. Maybe you can't do it on here.
I don't know, but I figure I can just keep checking it.
Yeah. I wonder. Oh, I guess you can archive. Maybe you have to have an account. I don't know. I have an account here, but I haven't logged into it in a long time. So I don't know. Maybe you can't. It'd be nice if you could, though. Because
I don't know, but I will definitely check on it again.
That's what I did for when I wrote oddly enough, the only fan fiction I ever actually published, because I've written quite a bit, but I don't let people see it usually, was a Theo James piece. It was for the end of Divergent, because I hated how she ended that. It was stupid and unnecessary. So I rewrote it, and that's the version I read when I read Divergent. I read my ending.
But in the series, for the series, for the book series, I mean.
Not for the movie, for the book.
Yeah, I haven't read the books.
The books are actually really good. I think they diverted, They diverted from it in the end. In the third installment, they diverted quite a bit from the books. It's not at all like the books.
And the third installment was really, they were making it into 2 films.
Mhm.
There was supposed to be a fourth, and it didn't do well enough.
No,
So they should have stuck with her story.
because they were forcing it. And well, also because the way they ended the third installment, it wasn't ending.
Yeah.
There didn't need to be another one, because that was essentially, that's where her books ended. And everyone fell in love with the books, and they completely altered the ending of the books completely. And people weren't on board with that. So,
well, certainly I like the first 2 films the best.
Yeah. So like with that, I know that I did it on fanfiction.net, and you can subscribe to the author, so that when they put out a new piece, you get notified that, hey, they have a new installment. So I wonder, I'll do some more research and see if you can do that on just so, and I'll put up the comments of this, guys, so you can see that. But just keep checking it regularly.
Yeah.
But what I did like in the beginning of that was just right from the jump in the first chapter, it made me laugh. It brought me right back to what I liked about Crow. Like, yes, this is going to be, because you don't see, like, there's not a lot of stories about the side characters. You see it's heavy Sid lot.
Right.
There's some string lot, there's some string lot stuff, not as much, but a little bit of string lot. And then you get like some fluff pieces, but you don't see a lot about these side characters that we fall in love with, because they bring a relief to the story. And so I like that she centered this on Crow. You get a little bit of Sid lot in there, because they're at their wedding.
Right.
But what I thought at first when I read this is that seems really out of character for Allison. But if you go back to the first meeting that Tom had at the Haywood house, Allison was like, oh, yes, I want to go. Can I go? Or whatever. At least in the book, it was in Austin's book,
that's right. She was interested.
Wanted to be a part of it. So I feel like she kind of wrote this Allison for more of Jane Austen's Allison. And I think that's largely because we didn't get Allison in the movie or in the show.
No, that's right. We only saw her just a little bit. And I think that's also why for the series where we get Jane, we get Allison in the new series, in the 2 new seasons. I'm sure she will be a little more feisty, and and it's probably one of the reasons we see her in the next 2 seasons.
Yeah. And you look at how Austen typically writes her sisters. I mean, let's take Elizabeth and Jane. Elizabeth is a rambunctious, opinionated one who goes against the norm, and Jane is the quiet and reserved one who stays right on par. Eleanor and Marianne, opposites, but they still had that same. And what she said in the first chapter was, Allison said, "We're Haywoods. We solve things on our own." So they still have this line of characteristics that lines up with them. I feel like she wrote Allison and Charlotte the way Austen would have written them. Not on the same. I mean, it takes a long time to write as well as Jane Austen. So I don't mean that, but I think that in the general theme of how Jane Austen writes her work, she stuck to that.
In the vein, yeah. And
the sisters opposite, but having the same principles.
Which makes it interesting. If they were just alike, it wouldn't be.
Exactly.
Why do you need both characters, you know? The dialogue between Crow and Allison is fun. You know, when they meet at the wedding, you know, you can see there's a little party back and forth.
Yes.
So it's fun.
And I like too that, and again, the first chapter is all I read, so that's all I'm going off of here. But I like there's in the first chapter, she says, Allison, there's something that happens where they're both bored and they both seek escape and they both ended up in the same place, not aiming for each other, but they both ended up in the same place outside. And so I'm going to read this little snippet here. It says, "Good evening, Mr. Crow." He looked up in the direction of the voice and inwardly groaned. "Ah, the other Haywood girl. Shouldn't you be frolicking away with the frisky young boys?" He rolled his eyes and looked away, bored already. Allison grinned and leaned against the wall, staying a distance from him. "Shouldn't you be propping up the bar somewhere?" she asked in an innocent tone. I always laughed at that. I love that. I love that interaction. And Crow hits back with, Crow grinned. "Touché, Miss Haywood." It's just, it's funny. It's entertaining, and that's what it should be.
Yeah, no, it's well written, and Yeah, she's unexpected to him, a lot like Charlotte was to Sydney.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a wisdom in drawing the same parallels with two completely opposing characters, because Crow is the opposite of Sydney. Allison
Yeah.
is mostly the opposite of Charlotte, but again, they have the same sort of vein. And I don't think Crow is all bad. I genuinely think from what we've seen of Crow and the scene that was taken out of Crow and Clara, I think he's a little more of a gentleman than he wants people to believe he is. I think a lot of what he does is, I mean, he's drunk most of the time, but that I think is by design. And I think the times he's not drunk but acting drunk, also by design. So I think that there is a kindness to Crow sometimes, but he just likes to be entertained. And so I think that there's a wisdom in drawing that parallel where we see her surprising Crow in the same way that Charlotte surprised Sydney, but being opposite characters.
Right. And as you get further on in these chapters, she really develops his backstory, which is very interesting. So yeah, it's definitely, his relationships with his family, which is all new and different. No, it's I'm always going to find some little thing that needs to be fixed, but it's very minor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure if she's listening to this, Tracy's listening to this, she'll go, oh yeah, that's right. About the carriages, but
yeah,
she'll know what I'm talking about.
So what is Crow's backstory? Briefly, don't give it away, but generally, what is his backstory? Is it a good relationship with his family, bad?
It's sort of a step parent kind of thing, step brother. Yeah, so he gets raised, his mother had passed and he gets raised by a stepfather and has who favors his own son, that kind of situation.
Well, that would make sense a lot. And I think that's something that Tracy does well too, is she pulls these characteristics of the characters that make sense, but we were never told. And so it explains something. Like with Crow, we always kind of try to figure out why he is the way he is and why he acts the way he is. But she grasped onto that and she made it make sense in a way that is plausible.
Oh yeah, no, it's very good. I mean, I hope that nobody thinks that I'm down on this writing, because I'm not. I think it's wonderful. It was very entertaining, and it's well worth reading. So it'll be interesting. Yeah. And especially since we're not going to get, she's writing stuff that we're not going to get in the next 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a completely different direction, and one I like. And one, frankly, that is a direction that they might have gone in had
I can see that
had ITV not canceled, and then that ends all the contracts, had the pandemic not happened, all those things that kept us from getting a continuation of the story in the way we all were looking forward to.
Yeah, I can absolutely see them going in the Allison Crow direction.
Yeah,
much like the Babington Esther collection or direction, only switched, where Allison is the better of the two and he's more of the outcast of the two.
Right. But I do admire the way the writers have gone with the new series, the new episodes and seasons is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, okay, that was taken away from them. And I think the way they've gone is interesting and plausible and could really lend itself to future seasons.
Yeah.
As you've expanded all the characters.
Absolutely. And I think what I like about how, at least my understanding of how Sanditon, how the seasons 2 and 3 are going, I like how they didn't really center it. Yes, Charlotte is the main event, but there's so many other little storylines that are offshooting of this that they are able to focus on things almost in equal parts to Charlotte.
Right. Right.
Which is, I think it's a difficult thing to do well, but I think the writers have proved that they can do that well. Even in the first season, we see the storyline, James Stringer and his dad. That's an offshoot. Right. That had old Stringer not died and Leo Suter was coming back, that could be another storyline that would still continue. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same with Fred. Yeah. I mean, that story, Fred and James would have continued on if Leo Suter was coming back. So there's, in the first season, they show that they can focus on multiple things well.
And also, you know, those interviews with Andrew Davies, he said his vision was that they in the next seasons and subsequent seasons that they were going to bring new characters in with new stories. That was the vision from the beginning.
Yeah.
So this is very much going along with that. They probably, we just would have gotten Sydney and Charlotte's story along with the new stories had that those events not happened.
And honestly, that would have come probably at the end of whatever the last season was, because that's how Austen writes, is you don't get your happily ever after until the end. And it's sure this is a happily ever after. And I think
but there's never been an Austen didn't write a series. You know what I mean? So having a series is different anyway.
Yeah. But I think that if you look at how she writes her books, it's laid out like a series. There's time that passes. And I think that's why her works translate so well to screen, because she writes passages of time. She writes indicators of how that time has changed based on people's personalities changing, things growing, events happening. And they take long periods of time. And there's big things that happen, but also a lot of small things that happen. So it lends itself well to a series and to a movie. And even they broke down that book into a 5-part series.
Yeah, they did. That's right. So. Yeah.
And they stuck pretty close to the book in that. Like you can almost read along the book with the dialogue in that original.
Yeah, you're right. My favorite filming of that, of course, is the 2005 version.
I think Darcy was played better.
Yeah.
Okay, don't come at me because I love Colin Firth. I love him as Darcy. I always feel very nervous when I say that I prefer Matthew McFadden's version of Darcy, because people are passionate about Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy.
Yes, you know, that's right. And, you know, maybe part of it is I saw the 2005 version before I saw the 95 version. Yeah.
So, you know, when the 2005 version came out, I was in college, and all of my suite mates, we were obsessed with Jane. Well, I was the most obsessed with Jane Austen, but one of my suite mates in college, where there were 4 of us to a suite, she and I were right on the same wavelength. Like we were obsessed. So I had never seen the 1995 version. The new one was coming out. We wanted to go to the theater. So she had us all sit down, and we had like a week where we just watched one of the episodes of the series a night. So I just watched it ahead of the 2005 version. Like, and the day we ended the 1995 version, we went to the theater to go see the next one.
Yeah.
And then from there, we were like, you know, we're gonna go to London.
Yeah.
So we bought our plane tickets to London within the week. Like
yeah.
So I did see them at the same time, so it was an equal comparison. But I think that this writing it doesn't equal that yet in quality, because I don't think any of us really can. And that's not a harsh judgment on Tracy. I don't think there's a lot of writers that I would say they're equal to Jane Austen's abilities.
Well, not many people, you know, are being made and remade and you know, for over all these years. I mean, she definitely sparked visions for people. I mean, really, obviously, what Tracy is writing is an inspiration from Jane Austen.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's because her writing inspires really, really strong following. And I think that Tracy did a good job sticking to that Jane Austen vein and all the stuff I've read of hers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I don't think we're alone in that, because if you look on her Twitter page, when she was doing Susan's Plan, there was a bunch of us who were like, hey, can you just tag us when you put something new out? Because we need to know when you, and so she has, every time she publishes a new chapter, she'll tag you on Twitter if you want to be aware of when it's coming out. And it takes her like 6 or 7 tweets to get everybody's name out who wanted to be tagged.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of us who felt that she was still sticking in that Austen vein enough that, we need more. We want more. We want to be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest reason I think that I like the 2005 version over the 95 version, other than I just like the actors who played the characters better, but because to me they're more plausible, but the other reason is because the pace is, you know, the pace of the film is better, I think. It may not be quite as close to the, you know, but they get the essential in.
I'm going to be honest and say that I prefer the look of the 95 actors because I think that's more true to that time period, because the 2005 they're so rail thin, and I don't think that was normal for the historic period. I could be wrong there, but for me it just feels more authentic for the 95. But what I liked about the 2005 version more is that Matthew Macfadyen and Keira Knightley, I think, played their parts more passionately.
No, that's right. Those two is what I was focused on. Just those two. Yeah.
And I think he picked up, because actually Matthew Macfadyen had never read Pride and Prejudice. He
Oh,
didn't read it
really?
until after the movie. So he had no other input of Darcy other than the script and the way
Right.
he played it off. And I think that's why I like it so much, because he played Darcy off as shy and reserved. And yes, there's some arrogance in there, but he's not an egotistical jerk face.
No.
And that's kind of how they wrote the 95 version of him. Was no, he's really just an arrogant jerk. And
Yeah.
I don't think that was I never thought that was Darcy's problem. I always thought he was very hyper shy and
Right.
very, very reserved. And it was hard for him to be around. Like, he's an introvert.
And that really came out in that version in his
really
acting.
well.
Yeah. He's in a little tiny, at the very first, I think it's just the very first or second chapter of The Last Kingdom.
Oh,
He has a small part in that. But yeah, that's an interesting story. And it's an interesting story. It's an interesting film. The acting is wonderful. One of the things that they're doing is they've had 4 seasons, because it was based on a series of books, At the time they started doing the series, there were 10 books out in the series. So they divided it into 2 books per season, per season. Right.
Okay.
And then he went and wrote 3 more books.
Oh, wow.
And so what they're doing is, so they've done 4 seasons. So they've done 8 of the books. They're doing another season. They've actually finished filming it. They're doing the editing, and they just announced that they're going to do like a movie to finish up the last 3 books.
Okay.
To cover the last 3 books.
And it's called what again?
The Last Kingdom.
Okay. I always
By
get good
Bernard
recommendations when I'm talking with you.
What's that?
I always get good recommendations when I'm talking with you.
Yeah, by Bernard Cornwell. And I'm actually watching it for the 3rd time because I like it so much. And it's one your husband might watch with you.
See, that's an important thing right there, especially now with my diagnosis. Like, he wants to spend more time with me, so I can't get off the couch.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, you'll see in the episode I published last week or 2 weeks ago. You'll see this 2 weeks. I had said there was an announcement I wasn't ready to make, and what it is that I have breast cancer, so things are going to look a little different from here on out, and I may not be able to keep the same schedule. It might go to every other week as opposed to every week, depending on how chemotherapy does with me. I'm not sure yet, but it's nice when I can find something that my husband can watch with me, because I can't really get off the couch very often. Even now, before I've started chemotherapy, it's hard for me to get off the couch. So it's nice when I have that. And Sanditon is actually one where when he comes in the room, he won't admit it. He won't say, I really like that movie, or I really like that show. But when he comes in the room, he's like, what's happening? Who's that? Is that Theo James? What is he doing? Like, can you just sit down and watch with me? Because you're going to love it. Just sit down and watch it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I haven't had any luck getting any of my family to watch it with me yet.
No,
but
you're my only pal who will watch it with me. You, my friends around here, they say they don't have time, but you make time for Jane Austen. You just do.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you just got to start. That's what it is.
Just turn it on. I did get one friend to watch it. She's not as obsessed as I am, but she really liked it. I don't think she finished it though.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I said I couldn't get any relative. That's not true. My cousin, when she was here,
that's
we
right,
watched it together.
And she liked it, didn't she?
She liked it. It's just not my male. Like my husband and my brother have not watched it. But
my husband won't either. But it was on so much that he didn't have a choice. Every time we walk in the room, he's like, "Is this the bathtub scene again?"
Hey, and I saw, it was funny because I saw like the 1st or 2nd season after it came out, maybe it was the 3rd, they did like a Comic-Con, and they were doing interviews with the cast, and there was a woman who got up and talked about the fact that one of the things she loved about the series, it's the only one she and her husband could agree about.
Is what, Sanditon?
It was The Last Kingdom.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that they both agreed that they really loved it and they watched it together. And, so you should definitely do that with your husband.
I will. And, I told you guys that I was going to give you a list. You probably heard a lot of noise right there. I was going to give you a list of those fan fiction writers that we had talked about on the live, and I haven't put it out yet, but I do have them all written down right here. I don't expect you to write those down yet. So I'm going to get those published on this one. If you guys have a recommendation of a fan fiction that Janice and I should read and discuss, let us know. And if you wrote fan fiction and you want to come on with Janice and I and talk about it,
oh, that'd be wonderful.
That too. Janice and I will talk to you. We like talking to people. So let us know. You can reach out to me at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. Did I say that right? The.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. Yep. Reach out to us there, or you can find us on our Facebook group. Janice is in the group too, at the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram under the Sanditon Chronicles. And we want to know what you guys are interested in. And as I said, our filming of episodes is going to look a little bit different while I figure out this treatment plan and while I figure out what direction we're going, what we're doing. I still do have, if you were asked or you reached out to me and wanted to know if you could co-host, I sent you the list of all of our topics. So I still have that set right up until the mid-March. So we still do have topics to discuss, but we want to know what you want to talk about. We want to know what you want to hear about. We want to know what you're interested in, and we want to get that to you. So reach out to us, let us know. And like I said, Janice is also in our Facebook group, so you can reach out to her. She's also on Twitter too. You can find her on Twitter too under Janice Castle.
Yep.
And Instagram too, right?
Yep. So I want to tell you one other thing before we hang up.
Okay.
That is, I don't know if you saw that. I forwarded to you because I want to be sure you saw
it. The podcast. Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to watch them yet, but they're starting to put a series of, I think, 3 podcasts out about the new series that's coming out on Sanditon.
And Masterpiece is putting that podcast out.
Yes, PBS Masterpiece. And I subscribe to their their net newsletter that they put out periodically. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I would highly recommend people do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And they'll have interviews for you before I can get them for you because they're part of that. So listen to that and catch up with them. I know the Sanditon Sisterhood is still doing some promos with some people, I believe. Don't they still have people coming on for like Q&As or like shout outs?
Well, they got questions for Justin Young and the producer, I think. But anyway, they haven't actually scheduled a time for it yet for the Q&A. So I assume when they stop filming, they'll try to do that.
And if you want some fun content, check out the Sanditon Sisterhood, because they also have on their Twitter page, on their Facebook page, they had the shout outs from cast members that they've done. And we've published a couple of them. We didn't do them, but Sanditon Sisterhood published them on our Facebook page if you want to go through ours and look for what they wrote or what they said. So there's a lot of that. And if you're looking for even more Sanditon content, look up the new actors who are in this, because they have been killing it with their social media posts, posting stories and little videos, little shout outs, little clips. What is Alex? What is his last name? Blahos?
Yeah.
He loves his sideburns, so he does a lot about his sideburns, and that's always fun. And also check out the Sanditon Sisterhood and Sanditon itself just published some more pictures of Sanditon 2, and we see Ben Lloyd Hughes in there in his regalia. So regalia. He's not the military guy, but he still is dressed up in Regency clothing. So check that out. Catch us next week, where I'm not sure what we're talking about next week just yet, but
we'll figure it out.
Let you know when we publish it. All right, so stay tuned. We'll see you later. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.